I was listening to the Rigathi Gachagua interview today, and I have a few pointers and a few things that I've picked from the interview. Now, this interview seems to have been planned by Rigathi Gachagua team to respond to the president's interview when he was beginning the Mount Kenya tour. And in this, Rigathi Gachagua is a shrewd politician, if I may say, because he waited until the president's Mount Kenya tour had ended, sat down with his team, analyzed what happened during that tour, so that when he comes for this interview, he's able to counteract each and everything that the president said. We begin with the claim that the president made that Rigathi Gachagua had asked for 10 billion shillings. Rigathi Gachagua denied this very much in his interview. And I tend to side with him a bit because the president's team has had different narratives. Well, this doesn't necessarily disqualify the claim that they made that the deputy president asked for money. One, the leader of majority, in his interview with Al Jazeera, he claimed certain things. And one of them was that Rigathi Gachagua had asked for 6.5 billion shillings or thereabout. When Itumbi wrote on his social medias, he claimed that Rigathi Gachagua asked for 8 billion. Now the president, who's the Kenya Kwanza team leader, comes on air and tells us that Rigathi Gachagua actually asked for 10 billion shillings. All this is confusing. Did he ask for 2.5 billion shillings? Did Rigathi ask for 6 billion shillings? Did Rigathi ask for 8 billion shillings? Or did he ask for 10 billion shillings? And this is what Rigathi posed as a question to the journalist who was interviewing him. That the president's team needs to make up its mind and come together and decide how much Rigathi was asking for. Now, he goes ahead and tells in the interview that he does not need to ask money from the president. Well, we all know Rigathi comes from a very wealthy family and he's a wealthy man himself, and he has a lot of business ventures, though we do not know all of them. But he's a billionaire by financial standards. So the assertion that he funded the Kenya Kwanza campaign because he was in it is true to an extent. To what extent he funded the campaign, we do not know. But if he funded the campaign, that is not anything in question. So in comes the question in which the common mwananchi will ask, if he has money, why does he need to ask for more? Well, that question is to be answered by the parties who are privy to those conversations and all that. Another issue that Rigathi raised was the inconsistency with the story that the president was telling about the impeachment. After the impeachment, we saw the likes of Gladys Boscholi at a certain event that the president was present. She said that, I am a loyal foot soldier. Mr. President, you sent me to send Rigathi home, and I sent him home. Now, the stories that the president tells on each tour that he has made since are very different stories. He goes to Western and he goes to Northeastern. He tells them, I chased away a tribalistic man. He comes to Central. That word is not mentioned anywhere. In any of those campaign stops, nobody really mentions about tribalism. Because I think that President's team felt that if we mention that he was being tribal, we will be making him a hero to his people. But we need to think about all this. We need to think about the fact that the president's communication can be so inconsistent. Or who is to blame for this? Is it his communication team that is misleading him, or is the president a pathological liar? That is the big question. Now, the president asserted a lot of things on interview before embarking on the Mount Kenya tour. And it has now even emerged that he avoided certain areas. Places like Githurai, a place where during campaign stops, he will never pass without making a stop and addressing the people. He did not stop. A place like Mathira, where its member of parliament is one of his greatest supporters and one of the greatest critics of the former deputy president, he did not make a stop. It's as if he deliberately went to those areas that he knew were a bit less hostile, because I think we would have gotten a bigger picture of the Mount Kenya tour reception of the president if he had visited first areas like Mathira, he had gone to Keharo, he had gone to Githurai, he had gone to those places that would have naturally been perceived that carry the gist of the opposition from Mount Kenya against the president. Well, the Mount Kenya people seemed to have a lot of decorum, and it seems there was a lot of money that was used in this mobilization. We may not be able to prove it, but definitely there was a lot of money used. And a lot of people were paid a lot of money to mobilize the people, which is a norm in Kenyan politics. But the kind of mobilization that occurred in Mount Kenya was serious, because days before, a month before, we could see those representatives who were the president's representatives on the ground, dishing out foods, dishing out money, hiring people, motorbike persons to attend these rallies. And just begs the question, how much did the president spend on the Mount Kenyan tour? But now listening to the Rigathi interview, there were a lot of claims, some that match the data, some that match the time. Like the claim for 101 police officers, he says when they were moved to the National Intelligence Service, it coincides with the fact that people started disappearing then. And Justin Muturi as well has come out and said that the National Intelligence Service chief was called by the president when Muturi went to State House to demand the release of his son, and his son was released immediately. So if this is true, it points to the involvement of the National Intelligence Service. But none of this has been proven on paper, or we've not seen any kind of evidence towards it, but that is the assertion by these leaders. Now, Rigathi had a few truths in what he claimed, or what he said during that interview. The president goes to Embu and tells the people of Embu, you've given me a very competent attorney general. And now because he's so competent, I've given him a job to help me manage the civil service of the country. The president goes into an iftar dinner at State House and claims that Muturi was incompetent. It gives a bit of truth to what Rigathi claimed, that the president was trying to coerce the former attorney general. Of course, this is not yet proven, but if you match the facts, if you match the timelines, it seems just to align. Gachagua seems to know what to say, at what time, what to disclose. Like he refused to disclose how much he funded the campaign with. And I believe it's a smart move. But the fact that he waits for his detractors to come out, show their ammunition, fire, then he calculates how much damage it has done to his campaign and how much damage it has done to his image. He now plans an interview later on. So he responds. He's always the one attacking last. So his communications team is doing a good job. And the fact that he did the interview in English today is also something to give him marks for, because mostly recently we've seen him done interviews in his native Kikuyu language, and today he was giving an English interview, so everybody was listening in. Each and every country person was each citizen was listening in and understanding what Rigathi was talking about. And honestly to say, between the interview that the president gave and Rigathi gave, there seemed to be some resonance of truth in what Rigathi was saying. And I'm not in any case defending him. For the record, I believe all of them should go home. The political class is currently constituted. But that interview was a masterpiece, was a masterclass. And then he seemed to have been very prepared. He even had notes, reading of the dates, reading of exactly what the president said and where he said it. It resonated. And the fact that he actually had a very tough comeback and said that the president was not speaking to the electorates of Mount Kenya, but was speaking to his money, is an assertion that is a bit quite true, because we've seen a lot of money spent in this country during mobilization for political rallies, and the president basically wasn't doing a development tour, he was just doing a political tour. And I believe he was doing a test to know whether his foot soldiers could get him votes, to also know whether his foot soldiers were effective on the ground, and also to see the votes that he himself fetched as a candidate in 2022, whether they are still intact. Whether he still has the support of Mount Kenya, that is a discussion for another day, and that is something that we are yet to see. But in terms of the interview that Rigathi Gachagua had today, he was scoring major points. And that is how you do an interview if you're a politician. That is how you do an interview if you want to discredit a narrative that is being pushed out there. Because all along, he's painted the government as this conniving, maniacal, lying, and obsessed government that is just out of the stables and cannot really express itself in truth, but just tries to hide a lot of things. So Rigathi is scoring major points. And if I were just a Kenyan who had no much information and I was brought the two interviews, I will tend to listen to the Rigathi interview and believe him, because he tends to align his facts with the dates and happenings in the country. So it tends to be more believable, because the layman back in the village who votes actually does not have the time to go and research whether this is true. They just have to listen keenly to these interviews and understand, oh, this happened at this time, so it's true, it's this that was happening, it's this that was being pushed. So all this is it was a masterpiece. It was just brilliant. That interview was brilliant, and he's scoring major points politically. And that is my unfiltered insight.